The American Civil War 1861 to 1865 ended in Union victory, the abolition of slavery, and the preservation of the United States as a single nation. But for much of the war, the outcome was far from certain. In fact, the Confederacy came dangerously close to winning, despite being outnumbered, outgunned, and out-industrialized. So how did the South almost win the Civil War? The answer lies in a mix of military skill, political strategy, Northern missteps, and international dynamics that kept the war's conclusion hanging in the balance for years. 1. Superior military leadership in the early years. At the beginning of the war, the South was blessed with some of the most talented military minds of the era. General Robert E. Lee, Thomas "Stonewall" Jackson, and others consistently outmaneuvered larger Union armies. Lee's bold tactics in battles like Fredericksburg and Chancellorsville boosted Confederate morale and gave the South a fighting chance. These early victories gave the Confederacy legitimacy and momentum, convincing many, both at home and abroad, that the Southern cause might actually succeed. 2. Defensive advantage. The Confederacy fought primarily on home soil, defending its territory and way of life. This gave Southern armies a significant advantage. They knew the terrain, had local support, and didn't have to conquer the North, only outlast it. The longer the war dragged on, the more likely it seemed that Northern public opinion might collapse under the weight of casualties and cost. In many ways, the South didn't need to win in a conventional sense. It just needed to not lose long enough for the North to tire of the fight. 3. Northern war fatigue and political division. As the war dragged into its third and fourth years, Northern resolve began to crack. The death toll soared, the economy strained, and anti-war sentiment grew. The 1864 presidential election could have been the Confederacy's best chance at victory. Abraham Lincoln himself believed he might lose to Democratic challenger George McClellan, who ran on a platform of negotiating peace with the South. Had Lincoln lost, it's possible the Union would have accepted a divided nation in exchange for ending the bloodshed. 4. Cotton diplomacy and foreign interest. The Confederacy believed that King Cotton would win them international recognition. Britain and France relied heavily on Southern cotton for their textile industries, and the South hoped economic pressure would lead to military alliances or diplomatic intervention. While these hopes ultimately went unfulfilled, they were not unfounded. Had European powers formally recognized the Confederacy or broken the Union blockade, the South might have secured independence. 5. Initial Union struggles. The Union's early war efforts were plagued by poor leadership, inconsistent strategy, and a failure to commit to total war. Commanders like George McClellan were overly cautious and missed key opportunities to defeat Confederate armies early on. Meanwhile, political infighting in Washington slowed decision-making and muddled objectives. It wasn't until generals like Ulysses S. Grant and William Tecumseh Sherman took command, with aggressive, coordinated strategies, that the tide began to turn decisively in the Union's favor. 6. Guerrilla warfare and prolonged resistance. Even if the Confederacy had lost on the battlefield, many feared the South could resort to prolonged guerrilla warfare. The threat of an endless insurgency made some Union leaders consider the cost of continued occupation and resistance. A negotiated peace under those conditions may have seemed like the only way out. While this insurgency never fully materialized, the potential was real and frightening to Union leaders. Conclusion: a war that could have ended differently. The Confederacy lacked the industrial base, manpower, and global alliances the Union had. Yet for 4 bloody years, it nearly defied the odds. Through brilliant generals, a defensive strategy, strong willpower, and the hope of foreign intervention, the South kept victory within reach for longer than many expected. In the end, it was Union resilience, superior resources, and the leadership of Lincoln and Grant that turned the tide. But history reminds us, the outcome of the Civil War was never guaranteed. The South almost won, and the course of American history would have been forever changed.